On this episode of the Teacher Biz podcast, I am going to pull back the curtain and tell you what might be a little bit of an embarrassing story of my very first online business, which might be surprising to you, but it was not a huge success. It's not exactly a failure, but yeah, it's kind of a failed business. And I learned so much from that experience, and I'm excited to tell you the story today. So long before I had Kindergarten Ready, which is my main education business right now, I had this budget blog. And I didn't even think of myself as an online business owner yet. I thought of myself as a blogger. And it never occurred to me in the beginning to actually create and sell products. I just thought I would write blog posts and that I would make money by either putting ads on my website with a lot of traffic, maybe, or maybe I would try something like affiliate marketing, which, if you're not familiar, is just when you promote someone else's product and get a commission on the sale of that. So that was my plan. That's how I was going to make money with my blog. And it was appealing to me, the idea of working from home. And I liked writing, and I felt like it was something that I could do. Plus, at the time, this was 2016. It was September 2016 when I started my little blog. Um, it was really popular. Blogging was like really picking up around then, and it was a big deal. And there were a lot of people doing it and a lot of people talking about doing it. And so I thought I could do it too. Plus, of course, my main motivation was that I wanted to get out of the classroom. Around that time in 2016, to tell you my personal story, I had left my classroom teaching job. I had been a kindergarten teacher for several years in a really inner city school, and we had a change of administration. Which, long story short, I had a principal who was not ideal, and that principal was replaced by a principal that was even worse, like just so much worse. But she was a firecracker and she just didn't like me. I don't know why. Didn't super like me. And so uh she had decided to pull me out of my kindergarten classroom where I had been teaching for several years, happily with my, I mean, not always happily. It was a rough place to teach. There was a lack of structure and it was a hard climate to teach in. But I liked teaching kindergarten and I was good at it. When the environment was right, when I had the support that I needed, I was good at it. And anyway, so she decided to pull me out of my kindergarten classroom and that I would then teach fifth grade, which was basically middle school. It was a K-8 school. She wanted to put me upstairs in the middle school teaching fifth grade. And I was not going to do that. I had never taught fifth grade before. I wasn't interested in teaching fifth grade. It wasn't something that I was going to do. And she wasn't bending, and neither was I. We kind of came to a standoff. I mean, um, I don't know if I necessarily plan to get into this part of the story, but I don't mind sharing with you. I stuck to my guns and I started interviewing for other teaching jobs, and she wasn't going to change her mind, and neither was I. So I left that school. I left. And what I ended up doing after that for a year was being a reading coach in a school, in just like a lovely, wonderful, happy, well-run, peaceful school. It was such a different environment, and it was a nice change. And that was a wonderful job. But while I had my good job, my reading coach job, I had also been having conversations with my husband about that we wanted to grow our family and I wanted to be a mom. And I never thought that I would want to stay home with my kids. But then once I actually got to that stage of life, I felt like I had to be home with my son. And so I got pregnant and I was just thinking about it. Yeah, actually, even before I got pregnant, I was planning ahead because I am such a planner. And I wanted to start my little at home something to make money from home while I could stay home with my son. And so that's why I started my blog. Now, spoiler alert, my blog did not actually make enough money to replace my whole teacher income, but it did teach me so much about running an online business and so much about just what other people were doing in the online business space. It also taught me so much about what not to do. So let's talk about it. My blog was called Happy Humble Home, and it was about saving money and living frugally and all of these things that I would not in a million years want to talk to you about right now. But at that stage of life, my husband and I were recently married. We had $105,000 of debt when we got married, which was in large part my student loans. And of course, that came with all of these guilty feelings about bringing this debt into our marriage. And anyway, so we were living it pretty cheap and lean during those years and saving a lot of money and throwing it towards the debt. And eventually we paid it off. But at that time, I was really interested in saving money. It was something super interesting to me that I love talking about. Turns out, as soon as we finished paying off all that debt, I no longer ever wanted to speak about saving money again. Okay, and then at that time, I took this blogging course. Um, I had signed up for it in 2016. It was very trendy at the time. It was called Elite Blog Academy. You may have heard of it, EBA. It's taught by Ruth Sukup, who I absolutely love. And it was a wonderful program. But I was just like trying to be a straight A student. I was trying to do it like so perfectly that I just got really stuck rewriting blog posts that I had already written over and over and over again. And it's crazy to me now that that is the same person that I am, who now I will just pump out a piece of content. I will write an email. I will do it imperfectly. I have mastered taking imperfect action. But at that time, oh man, I just kept rewriting these same blog posts, trying to make them better. I didn't know that that didn't matter. I felt like if I had set my business up perfectly, then I would make more money in the long run and I would be more successful. And now I know that that could not be further from the truth, that it's the person who gets it out there that makes more money and not the person who does it best. In most cases, I mean, if you can get it out there and do it better in the same amount of time, then maybe you would have a leg up. But if it never gets out there, you'll never make money. We could do a whole separate episode about overcoming the perfectionism, because I do think that's a story worth telling. But that business was not based on products. And that was the biggest mistake that I made there. I was trying to make money in all of these other ways. I was on this hamster wheel of pumping out content and pinning it on Pinterest like crazy, which is another thing that I can't believe I spent so much time on. And I just did it all wrong. And for years, literally years, I never got to the part of that course that I was taking, because I just kept redoing those first lessons and I got stuck there and I wanted to do it so perfectly. I never got to the part where she actually talks about products later in that program. It's a much different program now. There's a different version of it somewhere. But I love Ruth and all she does. So I do recommend her if you're interested in blogging. But as far as my story goes, I never got to the good part because I was just so stuck for so long on redoing things that didn't matter. And so eventually, with lots of content and all of the Pinterest, eventually I did have enough traffic to qualify for Mediavine, which is a high quality ad network that pays decently. And my highest income month with my highest traffic with the good ad company was $1,200, which was less than one teacher paycheck. And of course, that is great if you're just starting out and you can make that much money. That is absolutely great. but I was years into it at that point, and that was the pinnacle of what just straight up blogging without products ever was to me. And along the way, I learned a lot of things. I learned how to design things in Canva. I learned how to write content that people would want to read. I learned how to email my list, and I grew in the 4 years that I ran that blog. I grew a list of less than 6,000 people. I think it was like 5,600 when I stopped growing it. Which again would be a great number if you were just starting out, but 4 years in, it wasn't that big. And so it was a little bit of a failed business. It just wasn't the best way to run things. But I am now so thankful that I had that experience, that I learned from that I learned along the way about what not to do going forward in my business. And so in 2020, I had a baby. I had my second child. And up until that point, I was making very little money with my blog. I actually remember I had this conversation with my husband about, someday our kids will go to school. And he's like, yeah, and you'll go back to school too. And he's talking about me teaching. And I was like, yes, I will go back to teaching unless my business is making enough money where that doesn't make sense. And he's like, yeah, of course. But, do you really think that's going to happen? And we both kind of laughed about it. We did not think it was going to happen. And now, of course, I have this successful business where it would just be crazy beyond belief to abandon my business and go back to the classroom and make less money. But I remember that conversation because how far I've come since then. So anyway, mid 2020, I had my second baby, my daughter. She came in May of 2020, which, let me tell you, was a very exciting, challenging, memorable time to have a baby. We weren't sure if my husband would be able to come to the hospital with me. The doctors were going back and forth about if the hospital would allow that. I was terrified that he would get like the sniffles or something, because if so, he would not have been allowed in the hospital. And that was my biggest fear. Anyway, I had my daughter. And then we were kind of buckled down at home, of course, for a while after that. I think most people were, but especially with a newborn. Um, and so I had some time here at home, and a lot of people had been reaching out to me about how to teach their child now that they were learning at home, and how to help them, and especially how to help them prepare their child for kindergarten. I was really passionate about kindergarten readiness anyway, because having been a kindergarten teacher in this very inner city school where hardly any of my students had any preschool experience and they were just coming to me, I had kids that, every time I say this, I get choked up. I had kids that had never seen a book before or colored with a crayon. They had no fine motor skills, and they just were completely fresh to anything in this world of learning. And having had that experience, I was really passionate about kindergarten readiness and all of the things that entails. So then kindergarten ready came from that. It came from me wanting to help these families. I knew that the people in my circle reaching out to me were not the only people struggling with this. And I thought that I could take my knowledge of the online business world, which I had always been loving to learn about strategy and tactics and marketing and all of the things. I just had not applied it very well to my own business. So I took what I learned and I created Kindergarten Ready. But this time I was sure that I would do things completely differently. So differently, just 100% differently. I knew that if I wanted to be successful and actually make money, that I had to focus on products, and that products are actually what makes a business, which is just common sense that I couldn't see because of all of my limiting beliefs about I can't make a product and what would anyone want to buy from me, and all of these thoughts that I'm sure maybe you've had too, because spoiler alert, all of us all of us with online business and with products have had those thoughts at some point. So that's why I didn't want to create products at first. But then I learned that through products, you could help your customer, your people, the people in your community, you could help them at such a deeper level and actually make enough money to sustain a business at the same time. So I knew I would be product focused. I knew I would be focused on growing my email list from the start, that would be a top priority because I had learned over the years that the money in your business mostly comes from your list. So let's prioritize that. And just having had the experience of my little failed blog, I was able to come at it really strong with strategy. I started running Facebook ads, and those worked for me to bring people into my world. And then I finally learned to do more of what is working in my business and less of what's not, instead of trying to always resuscitate the things that I thought should do well and just didn't. I had previously focused so much attention there because I wanted them to do well. And so I just kept trying these things that weren't working. I finally learned to let go of that. And if it didn't work, then move on and put my energy into the things that were actually working. So that's what I did right in starting Kindergarten Ready. And of course, I could do a whole separate episode about the Kindergarten Ready story and everything that's come from it. But I think if you've been around here a while, and if this is your first episode, go back and listen to some of the first ones, because Kindergarten Ready did a whole lot better than Happy Humble Home ever did. This business is thriving. It's doing really well. And I want you to hear that. I mean, we are coming to the end of 2023 now. And I will share with you that across the board, I am hearing that numbers are down and sales are down, and it's coming with inflation. It's coming with, and especially in this holiday season, it's coming with people trying to put their funds towards Christmas and just having less money in general. And I don't say this in a braggy way, but everyone I talk to is telling me that their numbers are down at least a little bit over last year. And mine are not. Mine are not down. I'm actually up. I'm the only person that I know who is actually significantly up over last year. And I plan to dive into exactly why that is, but I just share it with you to tell you that I know that if I am doing it and things are still working for me, and if you follow the path that I'm laying out for you and follow in my footsteps, that it's possible. Like, if I am doing it, it is possible, and I want you to know that. Okay, so that was probably a longer story, a more complicated story than you bargained for. But I wanted to let you know about that early experience that I had that really shaped everything going forward to me. Kindergarten Ready is really doing well at this point, and this year Teacher Biz is up there too. I'm really excited about this new side of my business and being able to teach you this online business strategy that I'm using in my own business through Teacher Biz. I think there is such a space for teachers in this online business world, and I'm excited for what the next year has in hold for us. I also want you to know that if you've tried things in the past with an online business, if you've maybe tried a blog or anything else online, maybe you tried being an influencer or promoting other people's products or anything small in the online space before, and it didn't work out for you, that doesn't mean that you can't be successful with an online business, because my first one did not work out so well either. It flopped. It did. It just was not a home run hit. And yet I now have a thriving business. So just keep trying. Find something that works. Try again. Don't ever be afraid to try again if something didn't work the first time. And just know that I'm over here in your corner cheering for you.